talking about motivate the unmotivated. It's not that people are not motivated. It's just that sometimes we need to give them the thing to aim towards and the thing to be motivated by. So basically, I'm going to show you how I work with my clients to calculate various types of bonus structures to give you some ideas to think about of how you can bring this back into your business and implement it. So mistakes most employers make are either no bonuses, right? Which you don't have to give a bonus. I worked for employers for 20 plus years before I started my own business. I still work for an employer. I'm a paramedic here in Rockland County, New York. I moonlight as a paramedic, and my employer, their extent of giving a bonus is a $50 check that they call a uniform check at the end of the month, right? At the end of the year. I worked for years in the IT industry. I only had one employer who gave a bonus, and he gave a holiday bonus. So whenever there was a holiday, and he was Jewish, so it was a Jewish holiday. So for the main Jewish holidays, he would give us a bonus. But other than that, nobody bonused, right? But it's such a powerful tool. Now, it's funny because in the legal industry, I've been coming across people who bonus way more. Like there's a lot of really kind law firm owners out there who want to share with their team, but instead they do arbitrary bonuses. Now, arbitrary bonuses are the bonuses that you're just like, you're doing a good job, so let me give you a bonus. Or at the end of the quarter, I'm like, I want to give quarterly bonuses to everybody. So I'm going to give a little bit to this one, a little bit to this one, a little bit to this one, but there's no calculation of where that money's coming from. There's no calculation. There's nothing it's tied to. Just because they're there and I want to write a check, I'm going to write a check. Now, nothing wrong with being Santa Claus, but it's not a good business model and it's not going to get you any results. Arbitrary bonuses are after the fact. Nobody aimed for them. And if you do it all the time, they get used to them and therefore it just becomes part of their compensation. Flat bonuses, often giving away too much. So this I'm running into with attorneys that are structured to get a percentage of revenue. And what ends up happening is that the firm makes a deal with their attorney and says something like this: we're going to pay you a salary of $90,000 and we're going to give you 5% of all the revenue that you generate. Now, I'm not talking about they're bringing new business in the door. I'm talking about their billings. The problem with that, there's two problems with that. One is often you're giving away too much. You're giving away too big of a piece of the pie. And the reason why often you're giving away too much is because we fail to calculate the base salary as part of it. When we start to look at somebody who's getting paid $100,000 a year and they're only bringing in $1 million, they're already getting 10% in their base salary. So when you add something on top of that, you're now giving them the total of that as a percentage of the revenue that they're bringing in. But more importantly, when somebody's comfortable, so let's say you're giving them 25% of their salary, that's 25% of the revenue that they're bringing in, and they do $1 million, and they get 25% flat, right? So when they do $1 million, they're earning $250,000. Well, if they're comfortable with $250,000, there's no motivation to earn another dollar. The motivation doesn't change based on how much they're doing. But what if they only got 10% for the first $1 million, and they got 25% for everything above $1 million? They're only getting $100,000, but they can unlock $250,000 for the next $1 million, which could be a total of $350,000. The real money, the real profit is after the mediocre performance. It's when they're starting to enter into rock star territory that we're really willing to share a piece of the wealth with them. And I think that's really the better way to do it. So there are 6 types of performance awards I'm going to talk about today. One is a bonus just because, like a holiday bonus, not tied to any effort or result. The second is a quarterly bonus, usually for achieving a KPI or taking a specific set of actions. The third is a monthly performance based bonus, usually for non-attorney salespeople, makes up a large portion of overall compensation. So this and the next one, the monthly performance-based bonus and the monthly commission bonus, this is usually their livelihood, right? Like their base pay, if they have it, is not really enough for the job that they're doing. They're relying on this bonus as part of their job, often called a commission. However, because you can't, in most states, share attorney fees with a non-attorney, we can't compensate non-salespeople with a commission. I'm sorry, non-attorney salespeople with a commission. So we have to come up with some other structure of bonusing them for the effort that they're making. And that's why we call it the monthly performance-based bonus. This slide deck would look different if I was talking to non-attorneys, if I was not talking to law firm owners. So monthly commission bonus, those are your attorneys that are able to get a percentage of work. And then you have quarterly performance-based bonus, which is usually for key and management level personnel. So maybe the manager of each department might be on this, and also your COO might be on this. And then there's an annual profit sharing bonus, which this is if the firm does so well that the owner has all of their needs and desires taken care of, and I now want to congratulate the team on making me even richer, I'm willing to share a piece of that. That's an annual profit sharing bonus. Okay, let's dive into each one. Bonus just because. This is the least favorite, but if you like to give out a holiday bonus, then go for it. I don't like doing this anytime other than holiday, that's the time when most people appreciate extra money. I'm going to talk about the Philippines in a second, but that's really where I got motivated on doing this. If you're allocating 10% of somebody's salary to a KPI bonus, and then you're also allocating 10% to an end of year holiday bonus, now you've got everybody that you give a job to, you already know that you're paying 20% more. Plus you're paying taxes, which is another 10%. And then you might have other benefits, which might be another 10%. So taxes and benefits are usually around 18%, unless you're really small and you're not giving any benefits, and it's just taxes. That would be around 10%, plus these 20. So you could be at 40% above their salary as loaded cost. So let's say that you're paying them $50,000. That means that all told, another 40% is $70,000, not $50,000. So just keep that in mind when we're discussing these, that if you start stacking them, you have to look at the totality of the picture when you're looking at it. Now, I like the way that they do it in the Philippines. When I hired my very first hire in my business, it was Tina, who's over in the Philippines. She's still working for me. I hired her in 2017. Love her. Her husband works here too. She does an awesome job. And when I hired her, I was introduced to this idea of the 13th month. So in the Philippines, they pay a bonus. It's the 13th month. And basically what's expected is that around holiday time, you're going to give to your employees 1 month's salary as a holiday bonus. Now, if you do the math, 1 divided by 12 is 8.3333%. So essentially that's 8.3%. I like that better than 10% because it's less. I also like it because it's actually a significant amount of money for people who are getting paid, right? Getting a whole month's salary. So I tried to implement that, and pretty successfully I've been able to do it, where I'm giving that amount not just to my employees in the Philippines, but to all of my employees. You don't need to do that, right? You can do whatever you want. This bonus is completely arbitrary, but have a plan, know what frame or structure you're working in. So if you want to just give $1,000 to every employee, then you know that if I have 20 employees, it's $20,000 at the end of the year I'm going to pay in a holiday bonus. Build that into your budget and make sure that you can afford it. So really, there's really no science to that one. This is the thing that's going to basically motivate the rest of your staff. So a quarterly bonus, one thing to be careful about is we don't want to give this to somebody who's already motivated by a performance-based bonus, right? So this is all of the staff who don't have any other bonus tied to them. We're going to give them KPIs to try to achieve. And then every quarter, if they hit those numbers, they're going to get paid. Now, typically I allocate about 10% of salary to this bonus. So every quarter, it's about 2.5% of their annual salary or 10% of their quarterly salary, whichever way you want to calculate it. It's the same thing. And what we're going to do is we're going to keep it simple, right? Don't give them too many KPIs. 1 at 2 max. The KPI should be tied to what you're trying to achieve in the business, right? So if you set out at the high level, you say, hey, our goal for this year is to do $10 million in revenue at a profit margin of 30%, $3 million profit. How are we going to achieve that? Well, for the sales department, we need to have the sales team closing, 100 clients a month. And in order for the sales team to close 100 clients a month, we need the, intake receptionist to handle 250 calls a day. We don't want it to go to the answering service. So we're going to go to the receptionist and we're going to say, we're giving you a KPI of answering 250 calls a day. If you consistently answer 250 calls a day throughout the month, or maybe you use an average, then you're going to get your bonus. Now they have a motivation to hit that number and not to slack off, on the third day of the week and the second week of the month, to be like, I'm exhausted answering the phones. I'm just going to go to the bathroom, put myself on bathroom break, let it go to the answering service, and it is what it is, right? But now they've got that KPI. So here's an example. Legal assistant earning $50,000 can get a bonus of $1,250 per quarter, right? That's 2.5% per quarter. Bonus only gets paid if the goal is achieved. Don't make exceptions. We fall into these traps. They're like, they missed it by 2. They missed it by 2. They earned it. We should give it to them. No. The moment you make an exception, you now give them a lower bar. You're sending a signal saying, I'm going to pay you anyway. So you don't have to try next month. This is the number we set. And if you don't hit that number, you don't get it. So the bonus only gets paid if the goal is achieved. Don't make exceptions. KPI should be an action-based item whenever possible. People don't control outcomes. So this is another one to think about. Now, sometimes you have to make it outcome-oriented because there just isn't a great way to measure the action. But every outcome that you want is driven by an action that's taken. So if the action is to take the call, it's not necessarily to have a successful call. We're not counting how many transfers they have to the sales department, right? It's, because we're not making it reliant on the sales department doing their job. We're making it reliant on them doing their job. So as much as possible, we want this KPI to be an action-based KPI. KPI should be directly tied to the overall business goals. Example, PI firm wants more settlements. KPI could be number of demand letters sent. And that's a very well-used and well-known example. Monthly performance-based bonus. This is tied to metrics that directly drive revenue. Usually it's a number of dollars in the door plus another metric. So again, these are typically for our non-attorneys. And so we can't just share an amount of revenue, usually an amount of revenue and dollars in the door plus another metric. So such as close rate, paid in full, number of sales conversations, time to initial sales conversation. These are all examples. But when you start tying other things to it, it's no longer a commission. And when you don't do it dollar for dollar, but you create like these pockets of dollars, then we can skirt around this, issue of sharing attorney revenue. If they're not getting benefit of anything that gets collected later, like if you don't give them commission on monthly payments, you don't give them commission on sales made after their involvement, but they're only getting paid based on what they actually bring in, it's not really the attorney fee it's based off of. That also makes it a little bit more kosher, but obviously you want to do this within the box of what's allowed within your state. So take it with that grain of salt. Know the amount that you're willing to spend. Example for let's say non-attorney sales, maybe I'm willing to spend 5% of revenue, and you work backwards from there. So this is an example that I have in place for one of my clients. So this is their sales team, and they collect initial dollars up front. If they hit 55,000, that's when they first get a bonus, right? So anything below 55,000, they get absolutely nothing. So basically there's like a threshold of reasonableness that you have to do at least this minimum amount before we unlock anything. Then we have a close rate that we want them to get to. So their close rate, let's say, was tracking at 28%. We want them to aim higher. So we made the first one 32, and then we go all the way up to 38. This is just an example of how this is set up. So this is for the individual non-attorney salesperson. If they bring in 80,000 in sales, they have a close rate of 34%. They're going to get a $2,300 bonus. Okay. It's pretty simple. Now, there's also a team level bonus. For this particular client, they wanted to also motivate everybody to work together to achieve a bonus. So there's no set amount here. You can see this is changing every month. So every month, the sales team manager decides what is the target. And this changes based on how many salespeople are there. How well have we been doing? Do we have somebody new who's closing at a lower rate than everybody else? And basically this is a moving target. So every month the sales manager sets what these numbers are. And then if we hit them, these are the bonuses they can get. Now, what's behind this calculation? So behind this calculation, I'm not going to go too deep into this, but basically we said 5% is what we're willing to pay. So 1.5% is team level, 3.5% individual level. Now, this particular sales manager wanted the ability to just kind of like walk in and hand out an Amazon card. Decide at the end of the month to give somebody who was like the sales leader a night out in the town with a hotel stay, right? So we put 0.25% towards non-monetary goals and rewards, and then we split up the rest. So let's just look at the individual level. That's the example in this table. We have 3.5% of total revenue we're willing to pay out as a bonus. 2.5% is going to be paid towards the actual dollar amount brought in the door. 1% is going to go towards the close rate. And I'm going to create this table. Now this table shows what the percentage allocation is up here. So at the highest level, I'm giving them 100% of the bonus that I'm willing to unlock. Okay. I'm not dinging them at all. So in other words, 90,000 times 3.5% is what they would get at this 38% close rate at the $90,000 level. At 120 or above 120, they'd get the maximum bonus allowed. Okay. Now for everything in between, now notice that we're giving a small, tiny amount for this lowest level, right? Yeah, they hit the number, but they didn't get the close rate up, and we want to push them to get the close rate up. So we're giving them 25% of the amount here. If they get the close rate up to here, we're going to give them 40%. If they get the close rate up to here, now this is really moving the needle on what we want to do. We're giving them 70%, and here it's 100%. So the lower rungs of the ladder, we want to make these baby steps, and then the higher rungs, we're going to make the big leap. Monthly commission bonus. Now this is the bonus that we're going to give to, say, for example, our lawyers, that we want to really motivate them to do more work. Now, typically, if you're doing it monthly, it's usually the firms that are paying only commission to their lawyers. So there's like a flat percentage. Now, what I find is that usually law firms are going to give 30%, right, or 33% or 35% to the attorney, because they're thinking along the terms of, well, if somebody came in and referred me business, the acceptable referral fee is X amount, so I'm going to pay my attorney that amount. The problem is that that's too much. That is too much, and you're going to give away too much. You're not going to be able to unlock the profitability you need to unlock, and a flat percentage is actually demotivating above a certain level, like we talked about. So we want to have it tied directly to revenue collected. We want to have a stepped up amount, and we want to motivate high level performance. So don't pay well at the low level, right? You already saw me showing you that on the sales example. At the lower levels, the ones that are like, it's okay, it's mediocre performance at best, don't bonus the heck out of them. Save the really good bonuses, the really good amounts, for the amount that you're like, wow, that's really good. You did that amazing. Think about it this way. When I have one employee that could drive $1 million in revenue, or they could drive 2, or they could drive 3, right? If they drive 2 instead of 1, a lot more of that $1 million is going to be profit in my pocket than that first $1 million, because a lot of overhead has already been covered. So the more that the one person produces, the more profitable we become, the more I'm willing to share with them. So it's not just a game, it's the reality. This is an example from another one of my clients where they're paying their attorney $90,000 salary, and then they were giving 5% flat for any work above. Challenge: our attorney's not motivated to do more than X because they're comfortable. So here's 3 different ways that I proposed their pay to be. I would like them to not pay us flat salary at all and move away from that in this specific example, but there's different ways that you can structure this. So what I did was, the first thing I did was I took the 90,000 salary and I said, if we're willing to pay 10% to the attorney, how much revenue would they have to generate to cover their base salary before we start bonusing them? And that would be 900,000, right? So in this one, we're not going to actually pay anything until they get above 900,000. Then up to 1.4 million will be 8%, 1.4 to 2 would be 12%. And now this is not on the total, this is just on this amount, which is why you have these in here. So basically what we're doing is we're adding their salary up across the board. So if they were to do above 3 million, I think in this example, I did 3,045,000 is what I structured here. So for 3,045,000, they're going to unlock a $447,000 total compensation. But if they only did 2 million, they'd be 202,000. So the bulk of that, like more than half, is unlocked above 2 million in that last 1,045,000, right? I forget what I used to calculate that. The 45,000 is how much we're paying them. I think it's 3.5 million. I think that's half a million, 30%. Anyway, that's one way to do it. Another way is here where there's no minimum. So we're starting with a lower threshold percentage because we're paying it on everything. So it's on every dollar that comes in the door from the beginning. So we're paying that 5%, and then it's stepping up. So this is basically what they were paying when we started. And we just said, okay, so anything over 1.4, they're going to get 10, and then everything over 2, they get 25, and then 30. In this scenario, they're still going to get about the same, 465 for that level of pay. Then this one is no base salary. So we're going to start paying 10% on every dollar in the door from day one. And then we're going to go up to 15, and then 25, and then 30. They get higher percentages, which sound better. In reality, we end up paying them just slightly more in this example, but we're not committed to that base salary, and they need to actually bring that money in order to get paid. So hopefully this makes sense as well. Our next one is quarterly performance-based bonuses. Now, this is similar to the attorney commission structure I just showed you. Usually it's tied to revenue or profit, but could also be something else like lead volume or quality of leads to the marketing manager. Always predefine how much you can give in your business model. Too generous will prevent you from achieving overall results. And have a stepped up amount, kind of like what we just laid out. Big bucks are always reserved for high achievers. Give them a strong carrot to aim for. So the quarterly performance-based bonus, where would you use this? This would be for your upper level management, your COO, your team leaders, as well as individual roles that have a significant impact on the business. So like the marketing manager example, he might not be a division leader. It might just be the marketing guy. But the decisions he makes directly, it ties to the expenses that go out the door as well as the leads that come in the door. It's a very, very powerful position in your business. You really want to control the results, but you also want to pay this marketing manager really well if they're doing a great job in allocating your resources properly. So that would be a role, for example, that I would, even if they're not considered on your leadership team, that I would want to have them involved. This is our quarterly performance bonus incentive. This is an example. So if the profit margin of the business, in this example is for the COO. So I'm giving you an example of what we would pay the chief operating officer of the business. So the chief operating officer would be tied to the total percentage of the business, the total profit margin. And this is an actual example with one of my clients. So if the COO, if the business does 15%, up to 15% of profit, then the COO gets 1% of total profit. If the business does between 15 and 20, the COO gets 2% of total profit. If the business does 25%, the COO gets 3.5% of total profit. The more profitable the business, the more money in the law firm owner's pocket, the happier the law firm owner is, and the more that they want to pay the COO for the results, right? Because they're driving those results. And 30%, 4.5, 40%, 5, over 40%, 7. Here's some examples of what this looks like. So 5 million in revenue, $500,000 profit, 10% profit margin. So the owner is making 500,000. Not so exciting. So, but we still brought in 5 million in revenue. We were still profitable. So the COO is going to get something. They get 1% of 500,000. They get a $5,000 bonus. Whoop-de-doo. They're not excited. Neither is the law firm owner, right? Okay. We do 6 million in revenue. We do $1 million in profit. Now we got a 16% profit margin. The owner's feeling a little bit better about it. And guess what? 16% gets the COO into that 2% range. 2% of $1 million is 20,000. Now the COO is starting to feel a little bit better. But what is possible? 7 million, 2 million in profit. Now we're at 28% profit margin, 90,000 for the COO. You would agree that COO is worth $90,000 if the owner got 2 million, right? Now here's another example. Okay, we're not doing such massive amounts of revenue, but the COO helped us unlock massive profitability. We're a $5 million business and we're running a $2.25 million profit, so we're a 45% margin. Well, now the COO is going to get 7% of that profit, $157,000. Now, would you be willing to pay your COO $157,000 bonus if they unlocked $2.25 million of profit for you out of a $5 million business. And that's the beauty of performance-based compensation. As long as we have a calculation around it, as long as we have a way that we're arriving at it, I'm never giving away too much of the farm. 7% of total profit is not, it's not much, but it adds up to a lot for a single employee who's not an owner, but is directly impacting the performance of the business. And that's the idea here, is that we want to make sure that we're rewarding the people who are directly impacting our business. So annual profit sharing bonus. And this is one that I think every firm should have. I think that if you achieve a certain level of success, you should share it with your team. And you don't pay this unless you achieve that level of success. You don't have to predefine it where they know about it. This is just for you to be able to figure out. And at the end of the year, you get to be Santa Claus again, right? So this is a bonus that I would not pay with a margin under 20%. It's a way to share a really good year with everyone that contributed to it. I exclude anybody who's on a separate performance-based plan. They should have already had a good year through their performance bonus. And I'll say that again, right? We're not paying our non-attorney salespeople. We're not paying our attorneys if they're on their own performance-based plan, because they already got bonused for their results. They are, so the results of the profitability are not tied to their results, because their results are revenue based. I would also not tie it to the COO. The COO is already getting a portion of the profit. This would be everyone who's not getting bonus based on actual dollars performed would be included in this pool. Exclude any of those people. First, I identify how much you're willing to give, and then we figure it out. So either you can do a flat amount. So you could say, if they do over 20% of profit, I'm willing to give 10% of my profits away. Now, if you give 10% of your profit, you're going to bring that 20% margin down a little bit. I don't know the math off the top of my head, but you're still gonna make money. So let's say you made $1 million, you give 10% of that away. Now you made 900,000, but now you got to share 100,000 with your team. So you could do 10% of firm profits above 20%, or you can do an increasing amount like this spreadsheet. And this is very similar to the COO setup, right? If the margin is up to 20%, we give 0. If it's 25%, then we're going to share 2.5% of profit. 30%, we're going to share 5%, and so on. Okay. So under 20%, we're not paying anything into this bonus pool. Now, once we go here at 28%, now we're going to do 2.5%. So now we're going to share $50,000 with the team. We're at 45% profit. Well, 45% of $2.25 million is actually, I have to fix a quick calculation in here, because I was excluding 20%. So this is doing live math here. I'm escaping that endeavor because I don't want to tie you guys up. This is actually calculating a little incorrectly because I only wanted to pay them above 20%, but I'll still show you how I do it. So once we calculate the bonus pool, now I've got my employees. So I got employee 1 through 10. This is their salary plus bonus. Now, it doesn't have to be this way, but this is the best way that I could think of to allocate their level of contribution to the business, because somebody who's getting paid $24,000 is probably a low-level, offshore's VA. They're probably not impacting the business the same as somebody who's getting paid $125, right? So the salary is indicative of their impact into the business. It also, for somebody who's getting paid $125, it's not going to be meaningful if we're giving them a tiny bonus. So I take my total pool of employees, and then I take their salary divided by the total, and that's a percentage of contribution, and then I allocate the bonus pool. So in this example, if I'm allocating 450, which I wouldn't be, because the first 20%, I'd have $1 million less in profit that I'd be calculating. So this would be 45% of, let me just do this. I don't like that this number is not working the way that I want it. We're just going to subtract the million manually. And we said 45% is going to be 20% we're going to give them. So it's 250, not 450. So now these numbers are accurate for what I would do in this scenario. So I made $2.25 million. I'm going to share $250,000 with my team. I'm going to keep $2 million in my pocket. My employee who made $50,000 is going to get an $18,000 bonus because we exceeded our profit expectations. My employee is getting $24,000 is going to get $8,645. Imagine what kind of impact you can have on these people. Now imagine how much harder they're going to work for you moving forward, knowing that when we achieve these results, we're going to get paid. So this is how you motivate the unmotivated. This is how you drive a team. This is how you are able to effectuate change.